If laws affect people, they should have a right to vote. But we have an entire cast of people from the age 17 down who laws apply to and can't vote. And you just are like, you shrug that off like you didn't contradict yourself.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with brain development. But we've all, like, you have to have an
not fully
age
developed till what, 25 according to the studies?
But how do you have a society in which you don't have an age that someone becomes a leader?
I agree, but why couldn't you have a society in which you had stakeholder democracy? It's the same logic.
So if you're saying that we should not disenfranchise children, why would you then disenfranchise people who are legal adults?
When did I ever make the claim that I wanted children to be able to vote?
You just said that if everyone should have the right to
No, I
vote.
told you that your view is inconsistent. If it is the case,
Welcome, you saying law affects everybody? Everyone should have a vote. Nah, I disagree with that, man. And the reason is because even if you're a teenager, you would not say teenagers should have the right to vote. If teenagers commit crime, the law still applies to them, right? The problem is that, again, we have a lot of people that has almost no skin in the game, making decisions towards people that already have skin in the game, right? At least, I agree with Andrew, move it at least to 25. 25. Some people, they're saying 35. I think that's a little bit too much. I say 25, you're out of college. See, you're out of college. You're starting to detach yourself from the crazy lifestyle that you're having in college. You're taking a little bit more responsibilities. Not only taking responsibility, you're thinking about, in the future, buying a house. You see, the mindset is very different, guys. It's very different. So I disagree with you on that one.
Positionally, you say, Andrew, if laws apply to people, they should be able to vote. Except, I don't know, everybody's 17 and under. That's inconsistent.
Because the laws
Hang
do
on.
apply to children
It's
differently than they
inconsistent
apply to
and a
adults.
contradiction.
But laws do apply to
What about the
children
laws that don't?
differently than they do.
What about the laws that don't? What about the laws where you're 17 years old and you can be tried as an adult?
Well, those are to protect public freedom. I mean, but everyone loses civil liberties when they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, but
That's everyone.
Do you understand that you're making a contradiction when you say if laws should apply to all people should have a right to vote because they have laws which can be applied, they can be sent to prison, was your example.
You're saying should there be an age restriction on the elderly? No, because they already put a lot into the system. See, the argument is, right, who's putting towards the system, right? You're not saying that 18 years old, you go to college, you're becoming a burden to the system. You're putting yourself into debt. Not only you're putting yourself into debt, you be very responsible. You're not paying taxes. There's a lot of things. The elderly already went through through life, right? And that alone, the system already stripped a lot of resources from the elderly. Yeah, I'm okay with elderly just voting. I have no problem with that.
Example. That would have to include everyone under the age of 18.
But people under the age of 18 don't go to adult
Yes,
prisons.
they do all the
they
time.
don't.
Yes, they do. That is, you want me to give you sources of 16, 17-year-olds tried as adults and sent to adult prisons?
Okay, but that's like an exception for exclusively horrific crimes. I mean, those are violent offenders.
Does the law apply to them or not?
To violent offenders, if you are a threat to public safety, yes. Everyone who is
You said you pay taxes on any money that you earn. Well, technically, you're right, technically. But when you go to college, not necessarily. Not necessarily. You can go to college and just get student loan. You can report your student loan, but you're not earning money through the student loan, right? In my understanding, well, I might be wrong here. But what I'm talking about putting back to the system is you having a job, right? Having a job, right? Make sure you're contributing to society one way or the other, right? And reporting those taxes because of your job, right? And usually that start happening between 25, 26.
If the law applies to them and they can be sent to jail, then by your logic, they should be able to vote, which means you're in contradiction.
To those offenders, they are sent to juvenile detention centers until they turn 18, and then they are sent to an adult prison. They're
sent often to adult centers, even at 17, to adult prisons.
You can be sentenced as an adult, but you can't be sent to an adult prison at the age of 16.
This would depend widely on the state. That you're in.
You commit deleting people. You go with the big boys. If you're committing a crime that has to do with deleting people, you go with the big boys, guys.
It's not rigorously enforced across the board like you think. There's not I don't think there's federal laws which say this. But
Well, then I
even
think
if it were the
that's
case,
wrong.
I'll just grant it.
Well, then that's wrong.
I'll even grant the entire thing. It still wouldn't matter. Laws apply to them. They can still be sent to prison. They fit both of your criteria. Therefore, if you say they shouldn't be able to vote, your worldview's in contradiction.
Well, then I think that's wrong. I don't believe that children should be tried as adults until they have become adults.
So no
I
laws
disagree with
apply to
that.
children.
No.
Well, then why shouldn't they be able to vote?
A threat to public safety always applies to everyone. Threats to public safety always apply to everyone.
Yeah, but why shouldn't they be able to vote if laws apply to them? That's your example.
Laws apply to children, but they are not, in practice, punished in the same way that they apply to adults. It's applied
Can they be
differently.
punished?
Of course they can
Then
be
why
punished.
can't they vote?
But you have...
You're saying make voting mandatory if it's important? Nah, not mandatory because you're not voting, still exercising an expression. You see? You're not voting and not being part of the system. You're still voting in a weird way, right? You're still expressing yourself, right? So that's my opinion.
have to have some way to maintain societal control. Children aren't just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want because they're
Right.
kids.
You need to be able to have some sort of societal control. So
Yes.
this would mean necessarily disenfranchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not
no,
adults.
it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want prisoners to vote on their right to own guns in a prison?
Not their right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're
But I do
disenfranchising
think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. If you're a felon, you can't vote.
Yes. Oh, well, once
Well,
they
in
leave,
certain
yes,
states,
I do
yeah.
think that that's disenfranchisement, and I think Florida just rolled that back. Good
Yeah,
for
but
Florida.
what's wrong with disenfranchised?
Yeah, and that in Florida had that. I don't know if they still have it, but I don't know why some state they have that. Like, how is it that you commit a crime and you're still having the privilege of changing the system? Like, this is this progressive mindset that is just eating the nation. I'm originally from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and we still have those kind of laws. I think Florida has those laws. I won't be surprised if California, New York have some of these laws. Like, this is not the way we want to go. We want to make sure if you commit a crime, I'm all for. Listen, guys, I'll go a little bit Salvadorian here. You commit a crime. Let's say you have 50 years. Okay, I can cut those 50 years by 20 if you work for me. You're gonna work for the state for the next 30 years, and you're not gonna earn a dime. You're gonna be making shirts, pants. I don't know, very simple things that we probably will need to make sure we have the resources, and that way I can somehow give back to the community. Meaning the prisoner can give back to the community. It's not okay for us to be having these people in prison and they're not contributing their guilt back to the community. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comment section.
Like murderers for life.
What's wrong with disenfranchisement? Well, they would be in jail for life. If
No.
they committed a
They're
murder.
out of jail. They're just felons, so they can't vote.
Well, I think that felons should be able to vote once they
Should
have
felons
left.
be able to own guns?
No, because it's.
Oh, well, I don't understand you. So you're again.
But do you
It's so
understand-
inconsistent with your
Pause, Rena.
disenfranchising.
Pookie, do you understand?
Criminal liberal is a slavery. Well, in some state, that's how they put in their constitution. I think Georgia has in their own constitution. You become a criminal, you're basically a slave to the state. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. That's why this is where the accountability aspect comes into fruition, right? You have to make sure that's why we have to incentivize more, be a good citizen rather than a bad citizen or otherwise, right? Or something bad is going to happen. We'll become a
Disenfranchisement
slave,
should
whatever.
exist so long as someone is a threat to public safety. The reason why prisoners are not allowed to vote who are currently in prison is because they are a threat to public safety.
16-year-olds aren't a threat to public safety.
No, but they're children. You can't allow anyone
So
So
to vote
you
who's a
can
child.
arbitrarily disenfranchise people based on the fact that you think they're not capable of making good voting decisions, right?
No, a child is legally different than an adult.
Because they can't make
You can't have
good-
sex with a child.
'cause
That
they
would be
can't
statutory
make because
rape.
they can't make good decisions.
Law should be ethical. I don't know about that, man. Law should be ethical. I'm gonna give you a little bit of. Let me just give myself a little bit of time to think about that. But I disagree with that. Law should be ethical. It's all depend. Some people think ethically having the Second Amendment is wrong. But some people think that it's my right and ethic to protect my family. You see? Right? Ethic is based on what? What kind of moral system we're going to use for this to determine what is ethical or not?
No, because they're legally classified as a child. Do you not understand what a child
Because they
is?
can't make good decisions.
Because they're 2 and 3 and 4. They're not legally an
So
adult.
they can't make good decisions.
No, they can make good decisions, but generally speaking, you can't have children vote. There is a
I
legal age
agree
to
with
vote.
you. You can't.
Okay.
But why is it then that if I were to say that I only want 25-year-olds to vote, I would be disenfranchising?
But you didn't say you only want 25-year-olds to vote. You
do you
said
understand?
that you only want one marriage voting system per household.
Yeah,
You
well, that's
said
one way, yeah.
You want less of
But-
both adult men and
But
adult
do you understand how
women
my
to be
view is
able to vote.
consistent, but yours isn't? Because if you were to agree with me that you wanted, like, okay, Andrew, I would compromise the 25-year-olds voting, you've now disenfranchised everyone from the ages of 18 through 24.
If you were considered
All
a legal
overnight.
adult, you should be able to vote. That's my state. If you are considered a legal adult, if you are tried as an adult, if you are allowed to buy a house,
Yeah.
have a child,
But that leads to the problem is that leads to political tribalism. So, like, for instance, why is it a healthy society to have men and women who are married voting against each other? That's a
right.
terrible idea.
That is one of Andrew's best argument. It's not healthy to have mom and dad just having different opinions in a household. Because then the family has no direction. You see what I'm saying? It has no direction. And not only that, you're creating chaos. Unnecessary chaos. Unnecessary chaos. And when you have a family, guys, you have to make sure you can mitigate those kind of chaos.
both like, but if a man commits a murder, does his wife go to jail for that crime?
No.
No, because they're not the same fucking person.
What does that have to do with anything?
If they're different people and they're both tried differently and they both have separate lives and
Yeah.
separate bank accounts
Yeah.
and separate bodily and physical autonomy,
Yeah.
then they should each get a stake in this government. No.
Well, that literally has nothing to do with what I just asked.
They're not the same
So real
person,
quick,
so
can
why
you-
should they be
You
represented
remember
as the
how I
same
said
thing?
yes and no to your question? Can you do that for me? Remember how I was like yes and just answer?
She's not going to do it because, it has to do, she had to hold herself accountable if she said yes or no.
It. Can you actually do that for
I
me
don't
too?
remember that at all.
You literally just asked me that question. You said, if a husband's carted off to prison, does her wife go to prison? I said no.
Okay.
Can you do that for me too, and then give your explanation? Because otherwise, I don't
That's
know
what I
your
just did.
actual
I said his
position.
thing and then gave the explanation.
So now I'd like to know,
You should listen
do you
to
think it's a good idea for wives and husbands to be able to vote against each other's interests?
They should both have a vote, yes.
Well, that's
That's not the question.
But they can't vote against each other's interests, right?
That is circumstantial. They may not, they might.
Yeah, they may not. They might. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why is it good that option's even there? Seems like a terrible idea.
Because in a representative democracy, everyone should be represented with a vote.
Yeah, I get that's a descriptive truth, but you're not telling me why that should be the case. If I were to give you the counterclaim here, I would say if you had like one household voting or something like this, it would be much more uniform and wouldn't divide families against each other. And that's exactly what the vote has done.
But they're both subject to the same legislative, like they can both be legislated independent of each other, right?
No, well, not really. One cannot at that point make a decision that doesn't affect the other one usually.
Yes, I can.
Not really. What?
I mean, Roe v. Wade. That only affects a woman's body, right? No?
Oh my
You
God.
think that if a man is married to a woman and she goes and aborts his baby, that doesn't affect him?
Of course it does, but it affects him differently than his body.
But it's still, but that's my whole point is that everything they do in this household is going to affect each other.
Sure.
So you wouldn't want to promote systems
But they
which
still are
divide husbands
individuals.
against wives.
But they're individuals, no.
What does
Are
that
they
do
the
with
same person?
anything?
Are they the same person or not?
This is not what's in dispute.
Are they the same person or not?
Okay, no.
Then why should they not each have an individual liberty? What if they get a
Because you
divorce?
don't want to set up systems that divide them against each other. That's
well,
a
then
bad
don't marry
idea.
someone who doesn't want to vote for you, with you. But that's
No, do you understand that like people's preferences change over time, and there could be various reasons in which, if you have a tribal type of mentality, like take abortion for instance. Abortion's a great one. Do you think that it's possible that women, for instance, could hold it against their husband and say
Yep.
things like "do this" or "I'll abort your child"? They could actually do that, right?
yeah, hypothetically, sure.
Yeah, and have
that
done
would be
that.
immoral.
And have done that.
That would be immoral
Yeah,
and
but,
wrong.
but you wouldn't say they couldn't go get the abortion, would you?
But would you say a man can?
But hang on. Answer the question
You
first.
see, how it's just, this is where, have you guys noticed? It's just this answering the question with another question, like a bad life insurance agent, bro. This is worse than a bad life insurance agent. always answering a question with another question. What this does is just create frustration because we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. It's just a way of just portraying